As Elon Musk prepares to lead President-elect Trump's efficiency push, he's taken aim at everything from the Pentagon's budget to daylight saving time and posts on social media. But how much can Musk actually do in Washington? Sultan Meghji has some experience with government as the former chief innovation officer at the FDIC, and he joins us now to discuss. Sultan, great to have you on here. I know you're going to walk us through a few different inefficiencies you noticed in your time in government here, but what is the single biggest one that you think Musk could actually take on?
That's a great question. Fundamentally getting the people in the government on their toes is going to be the biggest thing. Everything from procurement to standard operating processes, these all predate the existence of the fax machine. So just getting people to wake up and realize that we don't have to do things the same way they were done before, when most of the people listening to this were born, will be the biggest thing, frankly.
How confident are you that that's attainable, that's going to be something that can be accomplished and accomplished in a timely fashion?
Yeah, this is kind of a multi-part answer. The short version is I'm not sure how much he's going to be able to get done because it's not a government agency. And to create a government agency, you have to get Congress to sign off on it, and it has to follow the rules that the U.S. government has. And that's a lot of work. And we know that, tax policy is going to be front and center, as will tariffs on the front end of the Trump administration. They really only have about 18 months before the next set of elections, and getting an entire agency created that has the legal authority to tell other agencies how to operate, how to hire, how to buy things. That's a tall order, even with the control of both houses of Congress, although it is a fairly thin margin there.
How much sort of AI goodness do you anticipate Musk and Ramaswamy being able to infuse into government, given that they're obviously huge proponents of the technology?
That's one area where I think there's a tremendous opportunity, and one that doesn't require a lot of legal change. The ability to use artificial intelligence to drive efficiency into human process is something that the government's been doing for a long time. We did it when I was in there. It's been going on for quite a while. The Department of Defense has really been taking the lead on this for decades, but a lot of other agencies are using this. We see it with financial regulators as they look at money laundering and terrorist financing. There's a lot there, and it doesn't require an act of Congress to activate it.
Sultan, I'm curious just to get your perspective on this. For an outsider coming in who doesn't have government experience, many of these appointees, and really across the board, how much of their experience in the private sector, is that an advantage? Is it a disadvantage? I guess, how should we be looking at that?
Well, it's both. I mean, the operating in the private sector, especially if you come from startups and high growth companies, you get things done on a daily basis. It took me over a year to try to get a new hoodie made with a logo on it when I was inside. And so you have to think about the scale of what you're trying to get done and the timing of it. And in some cases you can move quite quickly, but in other cases you can't. And understanding that there are processes, there are legal rules you have to follow in the government that you don't have to follow in the private sector is something that I think will be a bit of a dose of cold water for a lot of the people looking for day 3 of the Trump administration radically altering some operating model of a federal agency.
But I know that you are confident that cuts can be made, and that's interesting given that we've had some conversations with other experts who say there's actually not a ton of wiggle room when you take into account Social Security, Medicare, interest rates, all of those things. So what would your advice be if Trump called you after this segment? What would you say needs to get cut?
First off, I'd be really surprised if President-elect Trump called me. But I would say that this is an important point. Less than 50% of the federal budget is discretionary in any way, and so there is a bunch of stuff that's just preloaded. The thing that has changed over the last few years, and certainly it's more so now than when he was first in office, was that the U.S. government relies on outside contractors far more so than they did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 30 years ago. And those contracts are much more easily managed than an act of Congress. And so the ability for the U.S. government to tighten the belt on contracts is very high. There's also a high consolidation of number of significant vendors. Microsoft is one of the largest government contractors out of all of them, bigger than big brand names like that do defense work, for example. And so the ability to go in and renegotiate contracts or alter the contract structures is something that's really that I think is far more likely to turn to savings than firing X% of a workforce or something like that.